Mbeki dumela, dumela. Thabo Mbeki dumela, Thabo Mbeki dumela, Thabo Mbeki dumela, dumela. Hematiba dumela, hematiba dumela, hematiba dumela, dumela.
Mandla awethu, viva ANC, viva, viva ANC, viva. Long live the undying spirit of Robert Mugabe, long live. Long live the undying spirit of Robert Mugabe, long live. Amandla, forward to African unity, forward. Forward to African unity, forward. Comrades, before we do the official acknowledgements, can I request that we all rise and sing the national anthem? I will request all male cadres to remove their hats and be disciplined as we sing the national anthem. It will then be followed by the AU anthem. Over to you, DJ. Or do we have a choir? Or the choir is coming in, please come forward. You can remove that banner. Yeah. Remove the banner so that you stand there. Right. Amandla. Awethu. Long live President Mbeki, long live. Forward to African unity, forward. Long live Comrade Kuzeni, long live. Long live Comrade Ndiema, long live. Long live Comrade Mpemba, long live. Long live Thakwe, long live. Amandla. Awethu. Comrades, you are all welcome to the memorial service of the former president of our sister country, Zimbabwe, and our compatriot, former President Robert Gabriel Mugabe. We are not going to have a very long program, comrades. You will see in your programs that we did not include the normal in our program. Ordinarily, the convener of the RTT, Comrade Mshengu, was supposed to do the welcoming. But in the interest of time, we don't have that item. And we did not include the leagues of the ANC as well as the alliance partners. So effectively, in our program, only the provincial secretary will speak briefly in terms of the purpose of the program, as well as the provincial chairperson who will make remarks and introduce our main speaker. Let me then do the acknowledgements, comrades, before we go to the program. We just want to humbly acknowledge in our midst the former president of the African National Congress and former president of the Republic, who is still going to be introduced later by the provincial chairperson, Mzizi Siyabonga. Cela simshayele izandla. I must indicate up front, Mzizi, that there was a lot of excitement ever since the provincial chairperson and the provincial officials told us that you will be our guest speaker today. There was a lot of excitement across the province. In terms of the acknowledgements, you will also see who is present in this memorial service today, just to listen to you, Mzizi. We are expecting to have the following categories of comrades and dignitaries. The Provincial Executive Committee of the ANC, led by the provincial chairperson of the ANC, Comrade Kuzeni. But also in our midst, we do have the provincial deputy chairperson of the ANC, Comrade Ndiema, Comrade Mike Mabuya Kulu. We also have the provincial secretary of the ANC, Comrade Mdumiseni Nduli Mpemba. Can I then request all PEC members present to rise so that everyone can see the PEC members? PEC members of the ANC. We are just joined by the member of the National Executive Committee, Comrade Notawe Maf, who is always with us in the programs of the ANC in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, DM Siyakwamukele. All the leagues of the ANC are also here. Can I just have an indication of the ANC Veterans League? ANC Veterans League, if you may rise, our elders. ANC Women's League. Malibongwe. Igama lamakhosikazi. Wathinte abafazi. Uzakufa. Phansi ngokuhlukunyezwa kwabantu besifazane phansi. Phansi ngokuhlukunyezwa kwabantwana phansi. We also do have the African National Congress Youth League. Ilidwa uComrade Usihlalo, uComrade Umshengu, noComrade Uthandixolo. Can you indicate, comrades, where you are? Please rise, Vugaibambe. Roar, young lions, roar! Roar, young lions, roar! Siyabonga. We also do have the regional task team of eThekwini. Unfortunately, Mzizi, the REC has just been dissolved, so we have a regional task team. Comrade Mshengu next to me is the convener, and I am the coordinator of the task team, but also a member of the PEC. Can we request all members of the RTT to rise? How? Siyabonga. Now, let's proceed to our special guests. Order, comrades, order, comrades. It is my pleasure and privilege, comrades, to acknowledge that in our midst, we do have diplomatic corps. We've invited embassies of all our neighboring countries and embassies that have offices in KwaZulu-Natal, and a number of them have confirmed to attend. Can I request all our guests from other countries who are present with us to rise? All our guests from other countries, I know that there are special guests also from Zimbabwe. We'll still acknowledge them one by one from Zimbabwe. In the delegation from Zimbabwe, we have former cabinet ministers, some of them who have served with the former President Mugabe, and we also have a nephew who is almost the son to the president of Robert Mugabe, and the entire delegation. May I request all of you comrades to rise. Tell us Bashai Lizanda. Siyabonga. We have just requested Provincial Secretary that one of the members of the delegation from Zimbabwe will just greet us and have a few words. I know that we are pressed in terms of time, but it would be good to have one leader of the delegation in 2 or 3 minutes to greet us, but we'll call him later. We also have Amakosi Asendlunkulu, particularly the leadership of Contralesa. Siyawa acknowledge Amakosi Asendlunkulu. Ngicela sibashayele izandla. We also do have the business sector, KZN Growth Coalition and other chambers that exist in eThekwini region. You are acknowledged, comrades. We also do have members of the academia. We have invited vice chancellors from all our institutions around eThekwini, UKZN, MUT, DUT, and a number of others, and there is an indication that some of them are present amongst us. Can we acknowledge, comrades, the deployees of the ANC at all levels, national, provincial, and local? But this memorial service was not going to be a success without the members and supporters of the ANC and the general public from eThekwini. Can we also acknowledge our friends from the media, all media houses that are present here today? I understand that the program is being covered live on SABC. Siyabonga kakhulu from all our friends from the media. Can I now, at this point, comrades, request the Provincial Secretary of the ANC, Comrade Mdumiseni Ntuli, to present a purpose of our program.
Amandla, Amandla, long live the ANC, long live. Long live the South African Communist Party, long live. Qina Kosatu, Qina. Long live Sanko, long live. Watinta Bafazi. Watinta Bafazi. Roar, young lions, roar. Roar, young lions, roar. Amandla. Thank you very much, Comrade Mluleki Ndobe, the program director and a member of the Provincial Executive Committee of the African National Congress. Let me also join you in acknowledging former President Thabo Mbeki, the provincial chairperson of the ANC, Comrade Nyokawe, a member of the National Executive Committee and a convener of NEC members deployed to KwaZulu-Natal. Comrades, I'm going to be very, very brief. We have decided probably 2-3 weeks ago as a provincial working committee, of course acting on behalf of the provincial executive committee, because we have a responsibility to do the day-to-day work on behalf of the provincial executive committee. So we decided that following the departure of the president of Zimbabwe, that it was important for us as the ANC to celebrate the life and times of President Robert Mugabe, because we believe that and we know that he was part of the Pan-Africanists and the African patriots whose immense contribution to our struggle deserves to be acknowledged, particularly by the National Liberation Movement, the oldest one in the African continent, the African National Congress. So in making that decision, we also agreed that we will have to request some of our senior leaders, the most senior leadership of the African National Congress, to ensure that they avail themselves to deliver the message on behalf of our movement when we celebrate the life and times of such a senior African statesman. And of course, we approached the head office of the African National Congress and requested that in one of these celebrations that we're going to make, because you all know the province has got 11 regions, and practically it would be impossible for us to bring everybody to one center. So we agreed that we are going to have these celebrations at least in 4 centers of our province. And our desire is to ensure that all of them are addressed by senior comrades, veterans of our movement, who have had an opportunity in one way or the other to work with President Robert Mugabe before and after liberation of our country. And so we then approached the Secretary General and equally the office of the former president and said we would like him in particular because President Mbeki is, we believe, one of the generations that came immediately after the one for which President Mugabe was a member of. And so if there were any other people that President Mugabe, together with his generation, Oliver Tambo and many others who worked with him, if there were any other people that they can look up to and say, these are our own offsprings, these are people who came after us, who were nurtured politically and who were properly inducted into the Congress movement by this elder generation, President Mbeki is part of that important leadership of our movement. So it is on those bases that we identified him and we identified the other leaders of our movement who are going to address other activities that will take place, because we believe that we have an obligation as the current generation of leadership to ensure that we honor those who came before us. We recognize their contribution, we celebrate them, but we emulate them in order to ensure that we succeed in this complex battle to build a national democratic society. So, Program Director, we believe that as a provincial leadership of the ANC, we really spoke on behalf of the entire membership of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal when we said, let's allow the best amongst us to educate us, to join us, to give a message when we are celebrating the life of such a towering African giant, so as was President Robert Mugabe. So that's briefly, Comrade Chair, the purpose of why we're here today.
Mandla awethu no siyabonga kakhulu Comrade Mpemba, siyabonga nobhala. Comrades, there was just one omission in the program, but it's not a train smash, because it was important that before we invite them, they know the purpose of the program. the interfaith prayers. Because we are not going to have a sermon later, it's important that we don't miss this item. They will stick to time. Chaplain, please, over to you with your team of religious leaders. Interfaith prayers. May I request everyone to come forward?
Program Director, siyabingelela Baba Mzizi, siyabingelela kakhulu Mam Nocawe, siyabingelela hlalo wethu kwi-province ne-leadership yonke ye-province, siyabingelela amaqabane onke akhona nabefundisi egameni lenkosi uJesu sanibonani. Only one verse, Program Director, Ncwadi kaSamuel wokuqala chapter 20 verse 18. It reads thus: you will be missed because your seat will be empty. You will be missed because your seat will be empty. Sikulesi sikhumbuzo sikaqabane wethu Thabo Mugabe. Wonke umuntu ophilayo neqhaza libalekile. Futhi mayiseqedile akumiselwe uNkulunkulu kumele abuyele la bonke abantu bevela khona. Sixolise kubo bonke esibingi bacelile ukuthi beze bazokhuleka, kodwa njengomholi wabo bayazi ukuthi mase ngimile madoda ehlelani ngezansi, nami ngisebenzisa amandla engawanikwa ama-comrade ngenxa yesikhathi. Sifisa ukuthi sibonge nobhala ukuthi usibize sesikhona. Futhi sijabula kakhulu ukuthi okamziza bephakathi kwethu. Bengicela sithobisa amakhanda sikhuleke. uNkulunkulu wethu ngezikhathi zonke silekelelwa nguwe, nangezipho zonke zempilo sikuvela kuwe. Sibonga impilo yeqabane lethu esingalo namhlanje, olibizele la yonke imphefumulo yabantu bakho uyilondoloza khona, ubaba Robert Mugabe. Siyabonga ngeqhaza libambile, akangalibamba kuphela kwesizwe sakhe eZimbabwe kodwa libamba kumhlaba wonke. Asikukhumbula kuphela izinkulumo zakhe, kodwa okukhulu kakhulu esiyokukhumbula ngaye ukuthi ushiyela umphakathi waseZimbabwe ilizwe okungelabo ngokugcwele. Lokho Nkosi kukhulu. Siyakufisa nasezweni lakithi, kodwa futhi sikwenze sikwenze ngendlela eyoba nokuthula, ibe nobulungisa kubantu bonke. Namhlanje ke Nkosi umphefumulo wakhe engathi ungaphumule ebukhoneni bakho ngoba usebenzele sanethuba. Siyafisa ke nathi senethuba lokuba senze okuthile sikwenzisise egameni lenkosi. Amen. In communism
akunamuntu yini socialism akunamuntu mandla awethu. Manje ngijwayele ukuculelwa uThabo, uthande ukuba makudanyana. Siyabonga baba umfundisi, siyabonga chaplain, sibonge nakuma religious leaders wonke ngoku-understanda isikhathi, siyabonga. Can we request udade wethu uHlengiwe Mhlaba asiphe umcu owodwa while we are requesting one member of the delegation of Zimbabwe to greet us just in 2-3 minutes and introduce other members of the delegation. Hlengiwe Mhlaba, just one item. Halala hlekiwe mhlaba halala. Siyabonga dadewethu, siyabonga. Over to you, my leader.
Amandla. Amandla. Viva the African National Congress, viva. Viva Comrade Thabo Mbeki, viva. Long live the undying spirit of Comrade Zim Talks, long live. Bamberi na kushumbu. Abasha Konyoka. Thank you very much, Program Director. I want first and foremostly to salute Comrade President, Comrade Thabo Mbeki, who's here with us, our father, National Executive Member who's here, Mama Mafu, if I think I got you correctly there. My dear brother, Sikalala, we were in the Youth League together. I look old, but we were together. So we have a lot of stories. There's so many things that we used to do, but I can't disclose in front of the people. But we come a long way together. Comrades, friends, and friends who are here, also my colleagues from Zimbabwe. Comrade President, I don't have a lot of time, but on behalf of my colleagues, on behalf of the Mugabe family, I would like to thank the African National Congress for this memorial service. I know to Comrade President Mbeki, President Mugabe means a lot. If there are any other leaders I knew were very close, these two leaders were very close. Some of us knew quietly that we have a president of Zimbabwe who's in South Africa, and that president is Comrade Mbeki. He knew a lot about our country. I'm sure he would also participate in our deployment. When I was Minister of Indigenization, he would call me and say, yeah, don't say this here, go in this direction. And I knew the old man has talked to him, talked to this young man, and vis-a-vis. Thank you very much, Comrade Mbeki, for being our father and our leader. I want to say, Comrade Mbeki and comrades from the African National Congress, President Mugabe, our leader who has departed, yes, in spirit and body, he has gone. But what he stood for will live with us forever. What he stood for will be achieved in Africa. Yes, he fought for independence, 11 years in prison, 15 years in the bush, and led our country through some of the most difficult moments. He did well for us politically, education. He did well for us in terms of institutions that he delivered. He brought about freedom and equality in our country. Above all, the land question. The leader who's here, Comrade Mbeki, again, was with President Mugabe at the hour of need. When he took up the decision to get back our land, a lot of the leaders deserted him. One party, one leader which stood with President Mugabe was the African National Congress. I remember President Mbeki becoming infamous when he said, well, I've arrived in Zimbabwe. There's no crisis. Everybody expected him to say something. President Mbeki shielded us from an attack. The Western world were prepared to launch an attack on Zimbabwe. And it is him who said to the British and the Americans, you can't do it. I will not allow you to do it from South Africa. And it is because of such leaders, as young people, we feel we have that big cover. What Mugabe stood for, the empowerment of our people, the resources that must come back to us, and control of what we have, is exactly what President Mbeki believes in. Comrade Mbeki, I don't want to speak too much here. We came here to listen to you because we know whatever you're going to tell us is what Baba Mugabe said to us. Thank you very much. Thank you, African National Congress.
Viva ZANU PF, viva! Viva ZANU PF, viva! Forward with the solidarity with all liberation movement, forward! Thank you, comrade. Very inspiring and instructive address. It was brief but precise to the point. Thanks a lot. At this point, comrades, without any further waste of time, we will just request Lerumo Lasichaba to give us one item as the provincial chairperson is coming forward to present remarks and introduce the president. Do we have Lerumo? Do we have them here?
Wetambo tina zikoti wekaya Oliva molo susha Oliva molo susha Oliva wetambo tina zikoti wekaya Oliva wetambo tina zikoshi wekaya zaba Oliva molo susha Oliva susha lumkuntu Oliva molo susha Oliva susha lumkuntu Osizo zabalaza Osizo zabalaza Osizo zabalaza Osizo zabalaza Oliva molo susha Oliva susha lumkuntu Oliva molo susha Oliva susha lumkuntu Osizo zabalaza Osizo zabalaza Amandla besenqala asebeyangena kodwa ke bazobe sebesinika one nje angizohlala naphansi. I will stand here.
Angola,
Long live the spirit of Robert Mugabe, long live. Long live the spirit of Comrade Mugabe, long live. Amandla. Long live the spirit of Comrade Bavelile Hlongwa, long live. Amandla. Comrades, our honored guest, the former president of the ANC and the former president of our republic, Comrade Thabo Mbeki. Former president, thanks for being with us today. The NEC member, Comrade Notawe Mafu, the leadership of the SACP, KwaZulu-Natal, and SANCO, the PEC of the ANC, led by Comrade Mike Mabuyakulu and Comrade Ntumsen Tuli, the ANC Youth League, the Women's League, the Veterans League, as well as the MKMVA and the PYA as a whole. I've seen the veterans of the movement, all of them, Mamemela, Bonke. I wish to extend my greetings to the leadership of all faith-based organizations led by our provincial chaplain, Reverend Livuno Siyabonga. Nabo bonke abanye. I also wish to extend our appreciation for the presence of Amakosi, especially Inkosi Umlife Siyabonga. Delegates from ZANU-PF who are with us today, we wish to extend our greetings to you and the message you have presented. Comrade Kusukuwere, who is with us, and the leadership of the delegation Yonke, we greet you today. Fellow comrades and all, Amandla! Maybe on the point that we were together in the youth movement, let me qualify it and add one element. The ZANU-PF Youth League dedicated its formation to the life and struggle of Robert Mugabe and celebrate the formation of the ZANU-PF Youth League in February. And they call it the February 21 movement. And I once attended it in my days in the Youth League. But in the ANC Youth League, when it was unbanned, when the ANC was unbanned, under Peter Mkaba, we declared President Oliver Tambo the honorary president of the ANC Youth League. And thus we celebrate the anniversary of the Youth League from the 10th of September, the day of the formation of the Youth League, till October 27, the birthday of Comrade Oliver Tambo. And that is because you will see that it's not a mere coincidence, but we come from the same political school of thought. Comrades, on behalf of the ANC, we wish to once again welcome our former president and convey our gratitude to him for accepting our invitation to address the province on the meaning of the life of a coalescent of the African Revolution, Comrade Gabriel Mugabe. At the time of our invitation, we had no idea that our province and the country would be mourning the sudden death of a selfless and a dedicated activist of our revolution, Comrade Bavelile Hlongwa, who was the Deputy Minister of Mineral Resources and Energy. We dip our banners in her respect and for the sacrifices she has made for the liberation struggle. On Saturday, Durban will be the host of a ceremony to say farewell to this young but revolutionary cadre who departed untimely. On that note, let me request that we stand up and observe a moment of silence in respect of Comrade PV. May the soul of our departed comrade rest in peace. Amandla. Comrades, the President will speak with us just in a minute. But allow me to say, Karl Marx reminds us that man makes history, man makes his own history, but it does not make it out of the whole cloth. He does not make it out of the conditions chosen by himself, but out of such as he finds close at heart and at hand. That's what Marx tells us. What shaped the history of revolutionaries is the life and the material conditions that they face. And because of this realistic definition of material conditions and their relationship with human beings, political leaders and cadres are not shaped by their own ideas, but they are shaped by the response they give to emerging conditions. And equally, for those who have asked why we celebrate Mugabe, we want to make it clear, Mugabe was also what he was because of the enemies of his own revolution. Because, among others, because of those who imposed sanctions to Zimbabwe so that they will stifle and defeat the leadership of Mugabe. For us, as the ANC, we recognize Mugabe as one of the greatest Pan-Africanists and committed to the internationalist struggle in the world. He stood with us under the leadership of Oliver Tambo in the struggle in solidarity with the people of Palestine, and he supported the struggle of the people of Western Sahara led by Polisario Front in the Northern Africa. This giant is one of those who spearheaded the agenda of African unity, but also he represented Africa in the world, including in the United Nations, without any compromise. As I said, let me not delve into details of the life and struggle of former President Mugabe, as I have no doubt that former President Mbeki will enable us to realize that Comrade Mugabe stood steadfastly for our identity and the rebuilding of Zimbabwe as one of the great nations of Africa. We today have elected to invite former President Mbeki to talk to us. Comrade Mbeki summarized his activism in these words, and I quote, "From my earliest years as an activist in the liberation struggle, I understood that activism also meant involvement with the African continental struggle for liberation and development," close quote. This is what Comrade Mbeki grew up in the ANC understanding and championed. That's why he was a member of the ANC Youth League at the age of 13. And that's why in 1962, he went to exile. But even in exile, he went on and furthered his studies in the University of Saxon. Comrade, were here gonna be addressed by the NEC member, former NEC member, who served in the NEC since 1973 and became the deputy 1975, serving in the highest decision-making body of the ANC. He served as the deputy president of our republic in 1994. He was then elected as the president in 1999 and in 2004. He has led a number of initiatives and missions facilitating peace negotiations in various countries, including Lesotho, Zimbabwe, Burundi, Cote d'Ivoire, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Upon his retirement, he is now leading the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, of which he is a patron. But he is continuing to pursue his ideals of African Renaissance and is known of his views about the need for Africa to unite and Africa to champion its own destiny. Ladies and gentlemen, comrades and all, let us stand up and welcome Comrade former President Mbeki. Mandla! Thabo Mbeki Tumela! Thabo Mbeki Tumela! Thabo Mbeki Tumela! Tumela! Yo Tumela! Thabo Mbeki Tumela! Thabo Mbeki Tumela! Thabo Mbeki Tumela! Yo Tumela!
Amanda! Thank you very much, Comrade Sihle, chairperson of the ANC in this province. Comrade Sihle has done all of the acknowledgements that I needed to make. In that case, he spoke on my behalf. I don't need to repeat that. But I must also add my word of thanks and welcome for the presence of our comrades from Zimbabwe. I got a message, I think yesterday or day before yesterday, to say that they were coming to this meeting. I had decided to discourage them, to say no need to come. Then I forgot to send the message. Because I didn't want them to be around here to intimidate me as I speak. But let me say thanks a lot, first of all, to the, if I may disclose a secret, Comrade Mdu and Comrade Sihle. The original invitation for me to come to the province came from the Youth League. And given that I'm still a member of the Youth League, I immediately agreed. But then, I think for very good reason, the provincial leadership decided to join hands with the Youth League in terms of extending that invitation. I was really very, very pleased that the ANC in the province had taken this initiative. Because I was concerned that there was no similar event in the country. And therefore, the leadership that's been shown by the province on this important matter is very, very, very welcome. Comrade Kasukwere started saying some of the things that I'm going to repeat. Because for us, as the ANC, President Mugabe was very special. I think in the first instance because he started his politics in the ANC Youth League. At Fort Hare, 1949, 50, 51, that period, when he was at Fort Hare, he was very much involved in the struggles that were waged at that time by the students. And some of the stories he would tell about that period are very funny. He told us one story one time that the students decided to boycott classes. They were fighting about one issue or the other. And then some students decided not to join the boycott. So a few of them from the Youth League met and said, what are we going to do? And one of the decisions they took was that they are not going to discuss this matter with the leadership of the Youth League at Fort Hare. Because the decision they took was while these other students who did not join the strike were in class, they went to the dormitories and take off the blankets of these ones who were in class and pour water on the mattresses and then cover them with blankets again. So you can imagine what would happen when I then come and I want to try to sleep on that wet mattress. But he was relating to us that even then it was necessary to engage in struggle in order to achieve what was wanted. President Mugabe was a member of the Southern Rhodesia African National Congress. That ANC was formed in 1957. He was part of its leadership. It was banned and was succeeded by the National Democratic Party. He was a member of that leadership. It got banned. It was replaced by ZAPU, Zimbabwe African People's Union, 1962. He was a member of that leadership. So I'm saying that this is somebody who had clearly demonstrated in practice where his heart and his mind lay in terms of doing everything possible to secure the liberation of the people of Zimbabwe. Then ZANU was formed in 1963. President Mugabe and the others came out of ZAPU to form ZANU. Now, part of the importance of that, in terms of the story I'm trying to tell, is that the ANC at the time took a decision that it would continue to work with ZAPU. It had already been working with ZAPU as a Zimbabwean national movement. It would continue to work with ZAPU since it considered that ZANU was a splinter group. So for many years, you therefore had the situation where the ANC was working with ZAPU and not with ZANU. So in that sense, you could say that we had lost contact as the ANC with this person, as I was saying, who cut his first political teeth in the ANC Youth League. In 1978, by this time, Comrade Mugabe had, of course, after serving 10 years in jail in Zimbabwe, had managed to leave after he was released and was in Mozambique, and took over the presidency of ZANU in 1977. 1978, we get a message while we're in Lusaka that there is a delegation of ZANU that's coming from Mozambique to see the ANC. It was led by somebody who later became the vice president of Zimbabwe, Simon Mzenda. And we were scratching our heads as to why such a senior delegation from ZANU-PF was coming to see us. Because as I was saying, for years now we had been working with ZAPU rather than ZANU. The delegation came, led, as I was saying, by Simon Mzenda, who was the deputy to President Mugabe, and made a very, very interesting and a very important proposition. They said that already the Zanla forces, that's the armed wing, were fighting along the Limpopo. And they said their experience was, of the armed units, was that the population in the then Northern Transvaal were the ones who were supplying their units with medicines. Any medicine they needed, they would get from our people in the Northern Transvaal. Where they needed radios to listen, for instance, to their broadcasts from Mozambique, the population in the Northern Transvaal gave them those radios. So it was a fascinating story to listen to, that they are interacting very regularly with the population in the Northern Transvaal. And they said then the reason we've come to Lusaka is because that population supports the ANC. And what we're proposing is that cadres of MK should come and join the Zanla units so that as they operate along the Limpopo, the MK comrades could cross the river and interact with this problem, this population in the Northern Transvaal, which was ANC in terms of its orientation. Now, this was a striking thing, because I'm saying, comrades, that since ZANU had broken away from ZAPU, 15 years later, during which 15 years the ANC had not worked with ZANU, 15 years later, Robert Mugabe sent his deputy to see the ANC to say, we are in a common struggle. We now have a possibility to assist you people in terms of engagement with the masses of the people in South Africa, and therefore, could you then get your comrades to come and join our units, and we will make sure that they are able to interact with this population in what is now Limpopo. I think that was a very clear demonstration even then, 1978, of the firm loyalty that Comrade President Mugabe had to the ANC and to our struggle here at home. That operation didn't work. And the reason was that MK already had some of its cadres with the ZAPU combatants in Zebra. And there was a fear among our military comrades that you could have a clash. And so you would have these MK comrades shooting at each other, some from Zebra and the other ones from Zanda. The political leadership was very much in favor of doing what was proposed in terms of our cadres joining Zanla. But I'm saying because of those considerations, we said, all right, let's put the matter in abeyance. We'll have to come back to it. will come back to this particular matter because it never disappeared. And then there was a conference of the Commonwealth in Lusaka in 1979. That conference decided, it's that conference which decided on the Lancaster House talks, which later led to the independence of Zimbabwe. Because we were living in Lusaka, we were very regularly in contact with comrades from the Zimbabwe Liberation Movement, both ZANU and ZAPU, as those discussions were taking place. And I remember them, I think it was the ZANU comrades, then gave us a copy of the draft statement that was under discussion at the Commonwealth Summit, a statement that they would make on Zimbabwe. And I remember one particular thing which we discussed with the ZANU comrades, which was a sentence in that statement, which was that the Commonwealth accepts that there should be black majority rule in Zimbabwe. Now, this was a victory in the sense that the whole Commonwealth, that includes Mrs. Margaret Thatcher, and finally agreed that Zimbabwe must be independent under majority rule. I'm saying I remember this thing because then we had quite a discussion with his comrades to say, let us remove the word black. So Zimbabwe must be independent under majority rule, without the black. And we're saying, you see, once you say black majority rule, inevitably, you will have to say white minority rights. So let's not give a color to this majority. Let it just be the majority. Then we'll avoid this matter. As it is, as it happened, we're all of us a bit late. We agreed on that, but we're all late. That statement went out as black majority rule. It had various consequences, one of which was the position that was taken on the land question at Lancaster House. It had to do with white minority rights. But comrades, I'm trying to tell you what was happening despite this very long period of separation between the ANC and ZANU-PF and therefore President Mugabe. In fact, we had begun to work together since 1978. And then came the independence of Zimbabwe in 1980. We were very, very keen to understand what would happen. Because there were two matters that were of significance for us in terms of the independence of Zimbabwe. One of them was that Zimbabwe had a relatively large white minority population. And therefore, we're very keen to see how the comrades are going to handle this particular matter. And you remember what happened. The leadership under President Mugabe as Prime Minister then took a very clear position, which was that we fought against colonialism, white minority domination, and so on, not against white people. And let's handle ourselves in a manner which will result in that national reconciliation. And I think you can see what happened with us here. in 1994, that we followed exactly on the footsteps that had been followed by the leadership of Zimbabwe under President Mugabe. So where Zimbabwe had in 1980 a General Walls to lead the Zimbabwe Defense Force. And some people were not sensitive to the extraordinary imagination and courage it would take to take Zimbabwe through that transition. People didn't understand. Why are they allowing Smith's general to lead the Zimbabwe Defense Force? But that's what we did here. We're following the example of Zimbabwe and said, in our case, we must follow this example that had been set. So their General Walls was our General Meiring. Chief of the CIO was Ken Flower, inherited from the Smith regime, Central Intelligence Organization. Here where the Chief of Police was Johan van der Merwe. I'm saying that period of transition, which was handled by President Mugabe and the rest of the leadership, ZANU-PF, there was a very important lesson for us in terms of how we might want to handle our own situation. Again, this, we must indeed pay tribute to the leadership of President Mugabe and the other comrades for what they did in order to assist us here to resolve what is an important challenge in terms of ensuring that we had a smooth transition, as smooth as possible, a transition to a post-apartheid democratic rule. Oliver Tambo attended the ceremony to lower the British flag and raise the Zimbabwe flag in 1980, April. And the very same day, day one of the independence of Zimbabwe, he met with Prime Minister Mugabe and said to him, now Zimbabwe is independent. Let's go back to the question that you raised in 1978. The need for Zimbabwe to help to support our struggle in South Africa. So President Mugabe said, Prime Minister Mugabe said to him, look, if you ask me, if you ask for permission from me that the ANC must operate from Zimbabwe, I will say wait. Because you can see, we are carrying so many of Smith's people, like the ones I've mentioned, many others. Give us time, those people will disappear, and then it becomes more easier for you to operate from Zimbabwe. He said, if you ask me, that's the response I'll give you. But rather than asking me, he says, why don't you send some of your people to Zimbabwe now to make an assessment, for the ANC to make an assessment for itself as to whether it can operate. So you don't have to depend on Robert Mugabe. So OR came back to Lusaka and reported this, and we said, very good idea. And indeed, we went to Zimbabwe. I was in that delegation, which went to Zimbabwe to assess the situation to see whether we can operate. Yeah. So that was in the very first month of the independence of Zimbabwe. So we stayed in Zimbabwe for 2 weeks or so, wandered around, talked to people, went back to Lusaka and said, of course we can always operate in Zimbabwe. Some operations would have to be underground. Some of them would have to be open above ground. But of course we can. So fine. So OR then asked, we had to go back to talk to Prime Minister Mugabe about that. And I went with him. Now, comrades, I'm talking about April, May 1980. This is a new young Zimbabwe. Across the border, the Limpopo, you have an apartheid regime which is intensely hostile to this government that's taken over in Zimbabwe. And obviously very intensely hostile, similarly to the ANC. But we're saying, despite that, what can be done? So we came back and met with President Mugabe, Prime Minister. As it happens, he was accompanied by the current president of Zimbabwe, Emmerson Mnangagwa, who was at the time Minister of National Security. And so OR says to Prime Minister Mugabe, we can operate. So Prime Minister Mugabe says, well, okay, if that's your decision, fine. Now, why don't we arrange that Thabo here and Emmerson must sit together and work out how you are going to operate. Now, comrades, I'm saying all of these things. I don't think they've been said before. We worked out a system of cooperation, which meant Zimbabwe Defense Force actually moved a battalion of the army to the banks of the Limpopo. The reason for that was that we could then bring in weapons from Zambia into Zimbabwe, which the Zimbabwe army would pick up at the border, take them through Zimbabwe to that battalion, so that our people would then come into Zimbabwe carrying no weapons. Instead, the Zimbabwe government would issue them with false identity cards. There were a lot of roadblocks at that time. So as they go through as Zimbabweans and collect their weapons on the banks of the Limpopo. I'm saying this is April, May 1980. There were other decisions that were taken, like the Zimbabwe government would issue us with passports which identify some of us as Zimbabwean, in order to facilitate movement in the context of any matter that would be sensitive. So instead of me traveling as Thabo Mbeki to some secret meeting somewhere in the world, I would travel as Patrick João all manner of detail like that, which were agreed. Some time later, I met a comrade who's late now. He used to be the chief of the Zimbabwe Air Force. And one day he said, this is some 2 or 3 years after this, 1980 thing. And he says to me, the people that you put here as a result of this agreement, I think you should move them out of Harare. The comrades who were in charge of this whole underground thing, move them out of Harare. So I say, why? He says, it's because I see them too often in places where they serve beer. And he says, send them to the bush. Because there, they will be bitten by mosquitoes. And the more the mosquitoes they bite them, the more they'll want to get home. But I'm trying to give you an example, comrades, of what the relationship was between President Mugabe, the leadership in an independent Zimbabwe, even from day one of the independence of Zimbabwe. And indeed, in that particular meeting with President Mugabe, he said, well, to OR, he said, look, if you hadn't asked me about this thing, the population of Zimbabwe itself would have asked me, what are you doing about the struggle for the liberation of South Africa? Many years later, in fact in 1989, ANC decides that it's inevitable that there would have to be negotiations in South Africa. It was inevitable. Namibia was moving in that direction. Cuban troops were leaving Cuba, Angola. And I think it was quite clear, it became clear to us that sooner or later the regime would have to agree to negotiations. And then we said, well, let's then prepare for that. At the time, the veteran comrades here will remember that there was a resolution 435, which was about Namibia. The Security Council, UN Security Council Resolution 435, which gave the responsibility to the UN to negotiate with the apartheid regime for the independence of Namibia. And so we're saying to ourselves, in our case, we don't want a 435, a resolution 435. We as South Africans must handle the negotiations ourselves. So we drafted a document, which then we marketed among the frontline states. It's Tanzania, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Angola. We didn't go to Mozambique. We'd run out of time. But in the end, when that document is finished, we then had to take it to the OAU to make it policy of the Organization of African Unity. And then we took a decision that we will then suggest to the OAU that there was an ad hoc committee of the OAU on Southern Africa, so that you didn't have to call a whole conference, summit of all the member states. You could call that ad hoc committee. We decided that that meeting should be held in Harare, in Zimbabwe. It was 1989. Fortunately, the OAU agreed. And the reason we're doing that was because President Mugabe, as host president, would have to make a major intervention with regard to that document. That if we handed the task to him to say, President, it's your responsibility to market this document so that the whole continent accepts, we knew that if he did it, we would succeed. And indeed, fortunately, as I'm saying, the OAU agreed, met in Harare, and that's where the Harare Declaration was adopted. Which was very fundamental in terms of shaping our negotiations here in South Africa, which is what kept Resolution 435 away from us, so that we could determine our own destiny ourselves. And I'm saying we decided that the best person to put this matter to the continent would be President Mugabe, and he did. There are many, many things that I can say about this. The relationship between us and President Mugabe. The comrades might remember this or might not know it. As we began the process of negotiations here in South Africa in 1990, the 10-year period of the Constitution of Zimbabwe negotiated at Lancaster House came to an end. So now Zimbabwe could redo this constitution, including addressing this matter of the land question, particularly as it related to the principle of willing seller and willing buyer. So Zimbabwe now had, by agreement, the opportunity to change the constitution in 1990. The then Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Chief Emeka Anyoku from Nigeria, then approached President Mugabe to plead with him not to change the Lancaster House provisions as they related to the land question. And Chief Anyoku's argument was that if Zimbabwe did something like that, moved to address the land issue correctly as they need to address it, it would frighten the white population in South Africa and make it more difficult for the ANC to negotiate with them. Could Zimbabwe please hold this matter back? And they agreed. That's why the land reform process was delayed in Zimbabwe for at least a decade. It was done in order to give us space here, in order to succeed in our negotiations with the apartheid regime. So, comrades, as I say, there are many, many things that I can say about all of this, but what is the message is very clear. And that message is that one of the people, one of the cadres and comrades that we should always value as one of the combatants for the liberation of South Africa was President Mugabe. As Comrade Gasquere has indicated, obviously, we ourselves knew very well that this relationship is a relationship of solidarity, shared interests, comradeship, and therefore there was absolutely no way in which, if Zimbabwe was faced with challenges, we would turn our backs. Couldn't be done. For instance, in 1998, the comrades in Zimbabwe will remember this, the heat was getting up in Zimbabwe around the land question, 98. So we spoke to President Mugabe to say, look, at Lancaster House, as you would recall, the British and the Americans had promised to give Zimbabwe money to take back land, to buy land, and never kept the promise. So we said to President Mugabe, look, let's go back to the British to remind them of their commitment, 98. He agreed. Actually, we had agreed on a 3-month, that for 3 months, he must not say anything about the land question. We will try and deal with it in that way. So indeed, I actually went to England and talked to Prime Minister Blair and said, look, as the South African government, we think you must honor your promise on the land thing. Because you promised to give money so that Zimbabweans, while respecting this principle of willing buyer, willing seller, would have the resources to buy. That particular year, Canada, UK, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the so-called white Commonwealth, all of them, for some reason, had budget surpluses. And so we said to Prime Minister Blair that if he committed himself to raising the money, we would talk to the other Commonwealth countries to support him. And he says, no, I agree with you, we'll do this thing, but it's okay. No, I will do the rounds. As a result, there was a land conference held in Zimbabwe in 1998, a donor conference to address this matter of the money that had been promised at Lancaster House. That was agreed, but dishonored in the first instance by the UK, that agreement. The matter came up again a bit later when the war veterans started occupying some of the farms. At a particular time, there were 115 farms that were available for sale. And I remember they would have cost £9 million. The Zimbabwe government sent a delegation to the UK to ask the British government, give us the £9 million to buy these 115 farms, to take the war veterans onto these farms that would have owned, away from these commercial ones. And the British government said they had no money. So we talked to 3 countries around the world to say that we need this money urgently. Fortunately, they all agreed. And then reported to the then Secretary General of the UN, Kofi Annan, to say there is money to buy those farms. He then said, no, can you please give the matter over to me at the UN, to us, to depoliticize it. That was the argument that was used. And so we agreed. It didn't work. The reason it didn't work is because the UN, whereas we were saying there was an agreement in 1998 about the land question, how to handle it. Now that we got these donors, go back, use that agreement. They said, no, no, no. That was not the UN agreement. Now the UN has got its own rules. And we said it'll fail, and it failed. Now, comrades, I'm saying there's a relationship of this kind between ourselves and President Mugabe. In 2000, after there was a referendum in Zimbabwe where a constitution was rejected in a referendum. Soon after, we were approached by the MDC, who said to us, can you please speak to President Mugabe to change, do some amendments to the current constitution, like this and that and that and the other. And I remember meeting President Mugabe. It was then the Jan Smuts Airport, which is now OR Tambo. He was on his way, I think, to Indonesia to make that proposal to him at the request of the MDC. And President Mugabe said, actually, listening to what you are saying, all of these amendments they want were in the constitution that they rejected. But all right, let's work on it. Now that is, in the end, that interaction, which was started by the MDC, ended up with the global political agreement signed among the 3 parties in 2008. Comrades, I've run out of time. I would have indicated some of what is contained in that global political agreement about many, many things about the future of Zimbabwe. If you read that global political agreement, it's available on the internet, you would understand what kind of Zimbabwe President Mugabe wanted. Because all of the elements in that document, he went through all of those as we were negotiating, as his negotiators were negotiating, and agreed. I'm saying that because some people, certainly in this country, not only, who are very fond of presenting an image of President Mugabe, which is driven by a particular ideological outlook. It's for instance, just now, a few days ago, this year, in this country, there was an article written in one of the papers, and it says, Mbeki's government steadfastly refused to help the majority of Zimbabweans to achieve what they wanted, which was to see Mugabe deposed. I never met one single Zimbabwean who said, I want Mugabe deposed. Not one. The ones who spoke to us, I'm saying the MDC, did say depose Mugabe. They said, help us to find one another. But there's a white South African journalist who says the people of Zimbabwe wanted to see Mugabe deposed. The last thing maybe I should say to indicate the complexities of this issue. In 2002, there were presidential elections in Zimbabwe. 2002. And two governments, the UK and US, were particularly interested that President Mugabe should not run, should no longer serve as president of Zimbabwe. And so they contacted us to make this proposal. A way must be found to make sure that he doesn't run. If not, if he runs, then he must only be in power for 6 months and then must resign. We had a lot of interaction with them. At that time, the Minister of Intelligence here was Lindy Sisulu. And she was the one who was doing the running up and down, talking to these people. In the end, they even proposed, this is a British government under Tony Blair, that they were ready to use force to remove President Mugabe. I've said that before, and Tony Blair said I was not telling the truth. There's a Lord Guthrie, British, who was at that time the Chief of Defense Staff of the United Kingdom Armed Forces. He did an interview for a British newspaper in 2007. And among other things, he said, astonishingly, the subjects discussed with Prime Minister Tony Blair included invading Zimbabwe. He was the Chief of the Defense Staff of the UK. And he says, people were always trying to get me, Guthrie, to look at that. But my advice was, hold hard, you'll make it worse. And Blair himself said elsewhere that the reason he could not get rid of Mugabe, which he would have loved to, was because it wasn't practical, since the surrounding African countries maintained a lingering support for him and would have opposed any action strenuously. And indeed, we opposed it strenuously, because we're saying the Zimbabwe people have got a right to determine their own destiny. There is nobody who's going to come from London who will decide for the Zimbabweans how to govern themselves. But in the end, the reason that you even had people from so far away planning to overthrow an elected leader of Zimbabwe was because this was a tried and tested African patriot. Stood very firm for the liberation of the continent, a Pan-Africanist, a great actor in the interest of the countries of the South. At a certain time, the non-aligned movement, 150 plus members, chose a committee of 15 to lead the countries of the South. President Mugabe was in that committee. I'm saying here is a great patriot, defender of Africa's independence, defender of Africa's interests, very principled, very brave, able to speak out in defense of those interests. That is why many people in the world didn't want him. But we are proud, very, very glad that we'd have this meeting to commemorate him. Because for us, he was a fellow combatant and a leader who would never, ever abandon the struggle for our liberation. Thank you very much.
Amandla. We may be seated, comrades. Siyabonga President Mbeki, siyabonga. Halala President Mbeki, halala. Siyabonga Mzizi, siyabonga President. This is a true commissar of our struggle. Comrades, let's get seated. We can't live before leadership. That is not the discipline of the ANC. Let's get seated, comrades. We can't live before the leadership. This is a true commissar of the revolution. In nowadays, today's, many are calling themselves commissars, but this is the true commissar of the revolution. I am sure, comrades, I am sure everyone present here today will agree with me that this was not just a tribute or a eulogy to President Mugabe, but it was a lecture about the life of President Mugabe, the lecture about our struggle. This is indeed education about the evolution of our liberation movements. I'm sure millions of fellow South Africans were also listening to this lecture. A lesson about Africa and a lesson about world politics. So many things that we did not know, President. Thank you. Thank you, Mzizi. Allow me, comrades, at this point to invite the Deputy Chair of the ANC to thank the President and thank all of you officially. Comrade Ndiema.
Amandla. Thank you very much, Comrade Siwa. All protocol observed. It is true that we are now much wiser than we were when we came to this memorial service. We are wiser because we drank from the fountain of wisdom that former President Mbeki shared with us with the greatest of clarity and filled with empirical evidence. We have learned the unparalleled lessons about the toils and the struggles of the late comrade, former President Mugabe. We therefore wish to pass a vote of thanks on behalf of the leadership of the revolutionary movement to thank the delegation of our sister fraternal movement, ZANU, for gracing this memorial service. We thank you for your presence. Your presence here today has strengthened the bonds of party-to-party relations between our respective revolutionary movements. We also thank former President Mbeki for articulating clearly and without any ambiguity the conditions and circumstances that shaped the terrain in which the revolution was waged to bring about the independence of Zimbabwe. We have also been exposed to the nuances in which the democratic Zimbabwe had to navigate and provide leadership on the varied and vexing issues that Comrade President Mugabe had to lead his people and her nation. We also thank all of you, comrades and friends, compatriots and fellow South Africans, for taking your valuable time and for spending this afternoon in such a profitable manner. Ongekho ulahlekelwe. Once again, we leave here being much more enriched by the disposition of former President Mbeki. Indeed, former President, we have truly made us more better South Africans and better people of the region for having given us the details of the insights that you have about the legendary former President Mugabe. On those words, we say to you all, bon voyage and drive safely. Thank you very much.
Mandla, comrades, let's get seated and allow the leadership to live. Let's settle down, allow leadership to live. Jumim Kokstedt on the stage. Mgandlela will follow, Malusi Mbogazi will follow. Let's settle down, comrades, let's settle down. Let's allow leadership to live. Jumim Kokstedt.